Hey everybody, welcome back. It's January 3rd, 2025. Happy New Year. And here is one of my witch hazels, Helleborus Jelena, blooming very nicely and appropriately orange. This plant often blooms a little bit in summer, in the middle of summer, and the flowers are yellow at that point. But it comes out with the appropriate colored flowers in the middle of winter. Let's see what else is going on around here. So this is one of my 3 species of Azara from Chile. And this is Azara serrata, and it's supposed to be evergreen. You can see that it is defoliated about 90%, and it hasn't been a particularly tough winter so far. It's over 50 degrees today, and there's actually some sun coming through the clouds. So we'll see what happens with Azara serrata. There's a lot of different species of Azara, and serrata, if you can see, has fuzzy twigs or pubescent twigs. I'll show you some of my other Azaras. Here's the most common one seen in gardens in the Pacific Northwest, Azara microphylla, and I've grown this in a lot of different gardens. Really like it. Very tiny leaves, blue-green, shiny, slightly blue-green, at least blue-green compared to some of the other Azaras. So that one's been here a few years and growing vigorously, but has not bloomed so far. And here's my 3rd one, Azara dentata, whereas that one over there is serrata. And the best way to differentiate them, the twigs here on dentata are not fuzzy. Now, this plant immediately started to become pale when I planted it in late summer, early autumn, and it's becoming more and more pale as the winter wears on. It hasn't defoliated like serrata, which is good, but becoming very pale. So we'll see what happens with these new Azara additions. Hellebore season is about to burst forth. You can see there's a lot of flower buds down here. I can't remember the name of this one, but it's one of the newer hybrids that holds its flowers outward, and sometimes upward rather than downward. This is my most recent addition, also one of the newer hybrids. This one is supposed to be Lausanne. Now, Lausanne, as far as I know, is the earliest hellebore to bloom. But I don't know. This plant might have been mislabeled, because I've seen Lausanne in other gardens this year, this autumn, that have been blooming for well over a month already. This one's way behind, so we'll see. But anyway, if you're looking for a hellebore that blooms in December, sometimes even late November, Lausanne is a good one. It just has pure white flowers, and the foliage, as you can see, is not variegated. There's another one that does have nicely patterned foliage. And a lot of flower buds coming down here. Again, I can't remember the name. I'll try and put the names of the two that I can't remember in the description. And here's my newest witch hazel. It's one that's sold in the Willamette Valley here by a number of specialty growers, and they're referring to it as Sally's Red, which I don't think is a legit name. So if it's something else, they've kind of lost track of what that is. But it's supposed to be one of the best reds, at least for Oregon and the Pacific Northwest. And it's just beginning to bloom. So that color on my camera, that's not very accurate. It's showing up as kind of pinkish red, but in reality it's more burgundy, dark red as I'm looking at the flower in real life right next to the flower on my camera. So it's got a lot of buds for being such a little plant. It's going to be fun to watch this one develop. See what we got going on over here. Here's one of my newer Hebes called Caro Golden-esque. It's not particularly golden, but wow, what a great color in the winter garden. I'll definitely be adding more of these because it just brightens up every place that you plant it. Here is my non-hardy red banana, or Abyssinian banana sometimes. I decided I'm not going to protect it for the winter or bring it in the garage or anything, so there it is. It was about 7 feet tall when it was in foliage during the summer, and it's collapsed down to a stalk about 3 feet tall with all the leaves drooping down. Here's also a new addition back here. This is a viburnum called cinnamon viburnum, Viburnum cinnamomifolium. It's called that because the foliage resembles the genus Cinnamomum, which is another broadleaf evergreen tree that's just barely hardy here. You may see the resemblance to Viburnum davidii. It does look a lot like that, but whereas davidii gets a lot bigger than people think, 6 feet or so, whereas this one, Cinnamomifolium, double that, 12 feet or more. So the idea is that it will fill up this entire space here, enhancing my privacy in this area. Here's one of the cannas that you can see I've cut down for winter and just left it in a heap of foliage to kind of protect the crowns. This is Canna musifolia, and this one produces a lot of like what look like growing points very near the surface and even above the surface, so they look kind of susceptible to winter damage to me. So that's why I left the heap of foliage on here, because there's a lot of susceptible looking crown growth underneath all of that. See what else is happening over here. Camellia juris yellow bloomed spectacularly last year and looks like it's gonna do so again if the weather cooperates, the winter weather cooperates. Here's another viburnum that I absolutely love. So glossy, and the names are kind of mixed up on this one. Viburnum awabuki is kind of what I'm going with. Viburnum awabuki Chindo, Chindo. Sometimes it's referred to as Viburnum odoratissimum. I don't know if that's correct or not. Sometimes it's just called Viburnum Chindo. But it's another one that's supposed to be very hardy here in Zone 8, but wow, I sure don't see very many of them. I've seen a few in downtown Portland as grown as street trees, doing pretty well there, but otherwise I never see this plant in gardens, so we'll see what happens. But it's supposed to get very big and again provide more screening and privacy in this area growing. If it does what it's supposed to, it'll get much taller than the 6-foot fence. Viburnum awabuki Chindo. It's fun to say. Chemiciperus lawsoniana, the Port Orford cedar, or Lawson's falcypress. This is called Oregon Blue. And this tree developed some stem cankers right out of the box. Try and highlight those for you right there. Now the plant's growing okay, looking beautiful, but that can potentially be a problem. We'll keep an eye on it. Nothing you can do about a stem canker. Of course, the English daisies. Longest bloom period of any plant I know. They'll increase in flower pretty much straight through the rest of the winter now and into spring and early summer. Now that Hydrangea Zorro has dropped all its foliage, you can really get the benefit of Fatsia camouflage. I hope that really sprouts up next year. The idea is for it to fill this corner and kind of be an overstory plant above the hydrangea. Same thing with this euonymus greenspire back here. I want that to get as tall as it wants, while the hydrangea and Mahonia, now berberis, soft caress, would remain as understory shrubs. All right, let's move into the front garden. One of my 2 Drymer through Tasmania. This one is inferior to the other, doesn't have as much red stem color. Look at that sunshine. Haven't seen much of that for days. Little blue stem is still very colorful. So I grew a lot of little blue stem during my years in Minnesota. I had a native prairie garden with a lot of these, so I kind of fell in love with it back there. And in addition to the foliage color, usually these flowering stems get nice silvery fluffy seeds on them, but you know what? That never happened here. They barely bloomed, and then the weather turned damp and cloudy, and they never really got that fluffy look. Guess we'll see what happens in future years. This is butterfly weed, Asclepias tuberosa, which I'm in the process of cutting it down because look what's going on down here. Narcissus. I believe this one is called Reinvald's Early Sensation, one of the earliest daffodils I know of. And you can see they're covered in flower buds. January 3rd. Pretty much all of my other narcissus are coming up too. Here's a new addition to the garden. We have a neighbor down the street, a wonderful Ukrainian family, and she is a wonderful gardener. She's got a beautiful display of perennials in her front garden, and I stopped to talk to her one time about her beautiful asters, and she did not speak English, so she really wasn't understanding what I was asking. I was asking her, what varieties of asters are you growing, because they're beautiful. And she never really did understand that I was asking for the name of the variety, but she did understand that I coveted them. And you know what? She reached down and yanked handfuls out of the ground and offered them to me, and now they're growing in my garden. She gave me pieces from 2 different varieties that she had. That was one, and this is the other one. This one's darker purple and a little shorter. This one's lighter purple and taller, so I think it'll be nice with the rudigraviolens, rue, purple with this powder blue foliage. My next project is to dig up this coneflower as it's kind of all flopped. This is, what is it? Cherokee Sunset or something like that? I can't remember, but it's a seed-grown coneflower. And there were 2 plants in the pot when I planted this, and apparently there are 2 different colors, because this part back here bloomed pink and was shorter. This part up here bloomed orange and was taller. So my project is to lift this plant and pull apart those 2 varieties and replant the orange one someplace here in front, because I don't want any pink up in front here, and put the pink somewhere in back. And I also might put a shrub here instead of coneflower. I acquired a new shrub called spice bush. The genus is escaping me right now. Calycanthus ruby spice. No, burgundy spice. Calycanthus burgundy spice, which is a variety of calycanthus that has burgundy foliage all summer, and then really good fall foliage that goes from burgundy to shades of yellow and orange mixed with the burgundy. I think I said spice bush, but that's not correct. It's sweet shrub, I think. But anyway, Calycanthus burgundy spice is the variety I'm thinking about putting here. Time to redo this container. This entire thing, we had some strong winds a few days ago, and the entire thing blew over. It was a south wind, which is the only kind of wind we ever get here in the winter. Blew over to the north and was laying right there, and somehow was undamaged. I don't know how that happened. I guess the ground was, with all the rain we had, the ground was saturated and soft enough to cushion the fall. Some of the sempervivums are starting to color up, getting a little more orange, which is what they're supposed to. This one is gold nugget, and that one is giant gold mine, but not very gold, more burgundy or rosy pink color. The cats have been neighbors' cats doing their business in this area repeatedly and really digging things up, so that's why I'm throwing all kinds of cut plant parts and pieces of fencing and cylinders of fencing and tomato cages in here to discourage the cats from digging around. Hebe Heidi, still blooming spectacularly. It's going to be a sad day when we get temperatures in the low 20s or high teens. That's probably going to end the flowers on this. Cyclamen are just very, very slowly growing, not much happening with them. They're probably getting bored of me showing my cyclamen doing nothing. This is Sedum oreganum, a native to Oregon on the coast. I think also probably in the Cascades. And one of the cats, or maybe a neighborhood dog, dug this plant all up. It was right here in one clump, and it was just laying in bits. So I took all the bits and stuck them back in the ground in various places. Sedum oreganum. The desert garden. More narcissus coming up. There's the cistus that I've cut down some more and we'll be eliminating, and we'll be putting something more xeric or succulent in this area. Hydrangea munchkin has now lost almost all of its foliage out here. There's more narcissus coming up. There's Pinus mugo, Karsten's winter gold. I've read a little bit more about this plant, and it really kind of requires some substantially cold temperatures in order to really turn gold or yellow. And we haven't had anything like that, and we'll see if we do get cold weather and this thing turns more gold. I'll share it with you on a new video. Here's a tip for this particular species. This is Cupressus glabra, Arizona cypress. This one's called chaparral. Beautiful sort of minty color, kind of changes throughout the year. And then the big blue one back there, also Cupressus glabra. That one's called blue ice, I think. Now, I didn't have any trouble with that one, but it seems that most Cupressus glabra, when they're grown in containers, they get some dramatically circling roots, and then when you put it in the ground, that never really corrects itself. And so this plant has been in the ground 3 years and has grown dramatically. They grow really fast, but it's still not anchored. When we had those strong winds a few days ago that blew that container over, this was also blown over, kind of over into this area. So I added another. This rope here is for the manzanita, because they sometimes don't want to stand up either. But then I added a new rope right there for the chaparral Cupressus glabra. Keep that standing up, and hopefully it'll eventually root in the ground. So when you're planting this species, I would say knock it out of the pot, wash off as much soil as you can so you can examine the roots, and hopefully you can tease them apart and get rid of any circling roots, either pulling them out so they're spreading in the hole, or actually cut them off if you can't move them or bend them, because that will cause some somewhat permanent stability problems. All right, into the vegetable garden and orchard. The weather's been so wet, haven't really done a lot of cleanup, but I'm gradually cutting down all the dead tomato and pepper stems and just letting them compost in here over the winter, little by little, and get that tidied up in preparation for the next vegetable gardening season. I think I mentioned this Calocedrus decurrens in another video, but I couldn't remember the name. And it is Burima Gold. Burima Gold. Just beautiful in the winter. Alright, that brings us back to the back garden again. Some of you may remember I had a Butylon Tiger Eye, or Eye of the Tiger. I think it's the same, two different names for the same plant, in a blue container right here all summer. And I finally planted it in the ground right here. The east side is probably the best place to grow Butylons in the Northwest. So we'll see what happens. You can see it's nowhere near as hardy as some others. For example, Dennis. Much hardier and happier. But hopefully this will regrow from the ground in spring. And this is a purple tender salvia that I had in the container along with it. I don't remember the name, and I was looking for the tag the other day and I couldn't find that either, but they've been introducing a lot of new hybrid salvias that are fairly tender. They're probably all hardy in zone 9, but here in zone 8 or colder, they're a little more tricky, especially if it's wet. And in my clay soil, pretty much always wet in the winter. All right, here's another hellebore that is absolutely loaded with flower buds. And again, if the name comes to me, I'll say it. Otherwise, I'll share it in the comments. I had this in a container last year and it bloomed spectacularly, and I was able to move it to wherever I wanted color while it was in bloom last year. But then it got a pretty serious infestation of aphids or whiteflies or something in the container. So I decided to pull it out of there and kind of cut a lot of the foliage out and put it in the ground right here. It looks like it's gonna bloom very well. Here's Acer Japonicum Ed Wood. In one of my last videos I showed how I had staked it up with bamboo splints and ropes and string to get it to go upward. And I just took that all off the other day, and I'm pretty happy with what it's doing. Fairly up right now, so we'll let it do its thing for this next growing season. Let's see, I think we have one more hellebore here. This one isn't particularly vigorous. I had it in front last summer. Wasn't very happy there, so I moved it back here. This one's called Jade. No, wait a minute. This one's called, it's yellow. I was gonna say Jade Tiger, but it's not Jade Tiger. But it's one of the yellow ones, and doesn't really have very much vigor, but at least it's gonna try and bloom here in the next month or two. Here's Edgeworthia, 3 flower buds. Once again, if the winter weather cooperates, this will be blooming by February, and I will share a video. This container is still looking so good here, but I don't want to touch it. But eventually, the plan is to put that Wilma Goldcrest cypress in the ground over here. where I had the Abutilon in the blue container. So right here, a vertical gold accent and the fine texture to contrast with some of the broadleaf evergreens, blueberry, and then here's a canna with orange flowers and highly colored foliage in the summer. That one's called Durban. All right. We'll end on the witch hazel. And we'll see you all next time.